The sky above Crestwood Heights was gray and low, like it had something to hide. The trees lining the immaculate streets rustled in the breeze, their shadows crawling across driveways lined with imported sedans and SUVs. This was a neighborhood built on Silentian Golf Club memberships and gated access codes, the kind of place where strangers stood out and secrets stayed buried. A black SUV sat idling in front of the house that bore a discreet for sale sign. Behind its tinted windows was Special Agent Jalen Rhodes of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. 39 years old, composed, and methodical, he had spent the last 6 weeks embedded in an investigation that traced illegal weapons shipments from Miami to Portland. Crestwood Heights, for all its picket fences and pristine sidewalks, was ground zero for a criminal empire hidden behind wealth and white-collar respectability. Jalen's current surveillance target was one Randall Satuna, once prominent defense attorney who now operated as the quiet brain behind a smuggling ring, using his reputation to insulate himself from scrutiny. The elegant Victorian across the street, draped in ivy and guarded by electronic gates, was Sutton's primary residence. Jalen had been watching the house for over an hour, waiting for a delivery truck or a courier to make a move. His camera was perched on a dashboard, his FBI credentials tucked safely into his jacket. His focus was total until he noticed the subtle flash of red and blue behind him. A police cruiser rolled to a stop. Its driver, Officer Bradley Kincaid, stepped out with the heavy gait of a man convinced the neighborhood owed him gratitude for his presence. Kincaid had been on the local force for nearly 15 years. He was known for his aggressive stops and a long trail of internal complaints, none of which had ever amounted to anything thanks to a brotherhood of silence within the department. To Kincaid, the sight of a black man sitting in a high-end SUV in Crestwood Heights didn't signal federal surveillance site, signaled trouble. He approached the vehicle, hand on his holster. Jalen noticed immediately. He rolled down the window and greeted the officer with calm politeness. "Afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" Kincaid didn't answer. "License and registration," he barked. "Now." Jalen complied. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his inner pocket and produced his wallet and badge, flipping it open to reveal the golden shield and his federal credentials. "Special Agent Jalen Rhodes, FBI. I'm here on official duty." Kincaid didn't even glance at the ID. Out of the vehicle, Jalen's jaw tightened. "Officer, you can call your captain. You should have been briefed that federal agents are operating in the area. This is a joint task." "I set out of the car," Kincaid shouted, his voice echoing across the empty street. Jalen took a breath and exited the vehicle, hands where Kincaid could see them. He had trained for moments like this, moments where his calm might save his life. "Hand on the hood. Don't move." Kincaid began frisking him aggressively, ignoring the badge still visible on Jalen's belt. A neighbor peeked from behind lace curtains. Another lifted a phone, possibly recording. But no one stepped outside. "This is a mistake," Jalen said quietly. "You're interfering with a federal investigation." "I'll decide what's a mistake," Kincaid muttered. Moments later, Jalen found himself cuffed and stuffed into the back of the cruiser, the steel biting into his wrists. His camera was left behind, still recording, capturing the final seconds before Kincaid slammed the door shut and drove off. At the Crestwood police station, Jalen was led into a cold interrogation room and shackled to the table. Hours passed. His requests to speak to his supervisor were ignored. Eventually, Officer Kincaid returned with a smug grin. "FBI, huh?" he said. "What are you really doing in that neighborhood?" Jalen didn't respond. "You're all the same. Think that badge puts you above the law." "I'm trying to enforce the law," Jalen replied evenly. "You're the one obstructing it." That was the moment the door opened and Sergeant Dana Whitaker stepped in. Unlike Kincaid, Whitaker was sharp-eyed and by the book. She glanced at Jalen, then at the badge on the table, and frowned. "We ran his ID. He's legit. Special Agent Rhodes is assigned to a federal task force out of Denver." Kincaid's face flushed. "Uncuff him," she ordered. Minutes later, Jalen was released, his wrists bruised, but his dignity intact. He said nothing as he walked out of the station, but the fury in his chest burned like a wildfire. Because while he was shackled to a table, Randall Sutton had hosted a meeting with two of his top couriers. The shipment they were expecting military-grade weapons was likely being rerouted, and every second lost was a threat to national security. He returned to the neighborhood under the cover of night, parked a block away, and resumed surveillance. The lights were on in Sutton's study. Voices carried through an open window. Jalen recorded everything. Across town, Sergeant Whitaker was making calls of her own. She had read the internal complaint history on Kincaid. She knew this could no longer be swept under the rug. When she reached out to the FBI's regional office, she was told Assistant Director Erica Shaw was already en route. By dawn, a plan was in motion. A federal team would intercept the shipment at a warehouse Sutton owned near the rail yard. Jalen would be point man. Whitaker offered to provide backup with trusted officers from her precinct excluding Kincaid, who had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The raid was set for 3 a.m. The warehouse was dark and silent when the team arrived. They breached from 3 directions simultaneously. Inside, crates labeled medical equipment were pried open to reveal assault rifles, grenade launchers, and stolen military tech. Sutton was arrested in his bathrobe, hauled from his home in disbelief. His empire crumbled within hours. And as Jalen stood outside the warehouse, watching evidence being cataloged under the early light of day, Assistant Director Shaw approached. "You did good," she said. Jalen nodded, almost lost it all because of one man's bias. "But you didn't," she replied. "You stayed calm. You brought justice. And you made sure the truth came out." Later that week, news of the wrongful arrest spread. Civil rights groups demanded accountability. Kincaid resigned under pressure, and Sergeant Whitaker was promoted for her integrity and leadership. Jalen returned to his Denver office with a commendation in his file and a renewed vow to continue doing the job with excellence no matter the obstacles thrown in his path. Because in a world where prejudice still wielded power, agents like him were not just enforcers of the law. They were its guardians.